Welcome to the number one friendship podcast in the country. I'm Matt Ritter.
I'm Aaron Cairo.
We are the Friendship Guys. We're here to help you make and maintain friendships that last. So, thank you for those of you who have been listening to us for years now, and we're excited to have our new listeners. We always like to start off with a little bit of a rant, and here's mine. Uh, Spring break, if I were in charge of things, there would be one, and it would be universal, and it would go across all grade spectrums. And I think it would only last 1 week. That's my hot take.
I think my rant is that Matt doesn't realize that we sometimes record our episodes in advance and that this will not be topical uh,
It's
anymore. But
You're completely wrong. Spring break is an evergreen, debatable topic. So you're 100% wrong about this.
in,
No
in
matter when,
January,
no matter
in
when this
January, we're
airs,
going to talk about spring
every,
break.
everybody's in a huff about the varying holiday schedules for their children. It's
Oh, you're
annoying.
talking about children's spring break.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm
So
talking about.
what's Matt lives
Fall
in a
break,
very
spring break.
Matt thinks that because he had a kid, everybody's had a kid who's ever lived,
I think
even though
maybe 75% of our
that's
listeners.
technically possibly true.
75% of
You
our
make
listeners.
shit up all the time.
What do you think? What do you think the percentage of our listeners is kids versus not
I mean,
kids?
what's the percentage of adults that have a kid?
I have no idea. We got to look that up.
What
Anyway,
percentage of yeah.
so Cairo, tune out then if you don't find this relevant to you. Uh,
70%. Okay, 70%.
70, 70. But the thing is that we try to get together, or we could say Christmas break, holiday break. I try to get together with my family, try to get them out here. They're like, well, my kid's, December 17th. My kid's December 24th. Okay, so I guess we can't get the family together. And then finally we figured out a way to work it all out. We're like, this has been going on for years. And then they switched it, from that they were doing the last 2 weeks. Everybody was on that. And then they were like, oh, actually, we're going to switch it to now it's the Christmas week to the second week of January where everybody's working. And then for like high school, middle school, elementary school, everybody's like, oh, I can't go away because my kids are on three different spring breaks. And my son just got out of a 2 week spring break where I was just like, this is just too long. I don't have anything I can do to entertain this guy. I'm working. So we need a national referendum. Look, okay, let's put it this way, Caro. Everybody makes a huff about something that doesn't matter to anybody, really, daylight savings time. And yet, spring break
What?
matters to everybody in a way, way higher level. It affects their lives. Let's do a poll to our listeners. What affects your life more? Spring break being on different schedules or daylight savings time popping up when you're not ready for
I mean, once again, you just made an outrageous comment. You think spring break? What about people whose kids are grown? Our parents don't care about spring break. I mean, you have a tiny sliver of parents with little kids. Daylight savings affects everyone from man to beast. You maniac. Also, some people just like to watch the world burn. Can you imagine 5 million people on break at the same time? The airports would be packed. The beaches would be destroyed.
Cairo, by the way, you just said it doesn't affect your parents. I guarantee it affects them when suddenly at their timeshare, everybody on spring break shows up.
Nah, my timeshare is not like that.
Mm.
It's very, you can't, there's only one level of occupancy full.
Oh, all right. And they can't break in. The spring breakers can't break into it.
Yeah, I don't think any spring break in Panama City is breaking into Aruba.
Anyway, this was the first year that spring break really jammed me up.
Oh, the first year, really? So the past 40 years of your life, it didn't affect you, you fucking psycho.
No, first of all, no need to curse on our pod. We don't curse.
Matt,
Second of all,
you riled me up from the
sec,
jump.
second of all, we went to public school where they give you a day and a half off to go play with some potatoes in a park.
Oh, you just made me harken back to the early days of the pod when Matt really he would yell at me for cursing. I stopped cursing for about 6 months, and then
I
Matt
can't
became the
believe this
potty
brought it back.
mouth.
I can't believe spring break brought back. Anyway, uh, this is not a smooth transition to our topic, but one other thing that has been coming up a lot uh, from our listeners and just generally conversationally, I always kind of try to street test what we should talk about. And one topic that keeps coming up, we actually had somebody from Canada ask us about it recently, if you recall, for an upcoming press hit that we're going to do was dealing with cliques, right? This is something I think you would agree. We get this question a lot of, how do you navigate cliques? How do you deal with competing cliques? How do you break into a clique? What happens when a group starts to fracture? Uh, there's an endless supply of issues, and I think that that's just something we haven't really delved into enough on the pod. So I wanted to just start with, maybe like how do you even define a friend group? Because it's a
I was just
little amorphous, right?
I
When
was just
people
gonna
go, oh, that's a crew. Like, how do obviously we have a high school crew and we have a trophy, but let's get back to the basics. Like, what even defines a friend group?
By the way, our high school crew was famously called the Crew.
So creative.
And
That was before
Matt,
Karo became the title pun master.
I know now would be like Bohemian Rhapsody or something.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Oh, that's not bad. Matt, it's so funny because when we were doing that interview, we were throwing around the term Matt friend group. Wait, are you drinking out of a coffee mug that has a coaster attached to it?
No, it just has a coaster shaped bottom so that it can slide nicely onto a coaster better. It's a
Okay,
Jesse. It's a Jesse original. It's got
it
like a
wasn't.
cool It's got a cool bottom, so it sits nicer on the coaster.
I mean, because why don't they make mugs with coasters on the bottom?
Mm, I don't know. It still
I
would
think that
leak.
might have been the Seinfeld episode.
Oh yeah,
Um,
maybe.
so we were doing that interview, and me and you were bandying about friend group. Oh, our friend group does this, our friend group that, and she goes very politely, very Canadian. She's like, "Well, what is a friend group? What do
Mm,
you mean friend group? How do I become a friend group?"
right.
So I would say that a friend group is a sort of a naturally forming subsection of your larger social universe. So you can be in multiple friend groups, they can overlap like Venn diagrams. And that would be sort of um, a smaller group with a shared interest or background that you do certain things with.
And I guess the question is then, can can you have overlapping? I guess it's sort of like when you said like, is it healthy to define your friend groups? That's the question, right? Is it healthy for you to define your friend groups, and is that alienating? Is that making people feel included? Like, what are the pros and cons of going, this is my friend group, these people?
It's pretty interesting. You can have multiple friend groups, and you could be part of multiple friend groups. Matt. It's kind of a competing argument because we tell our listeners to ritualize the rituals, and
Right.
for our new listeners, if you have a tradition or you have a friend group, we say give it a name, give it a group chat. Matt made hats for one of his friend groups. And you're also asking Matt is like, oh, is that alienating to people not in the friend group, which is pretty interesting. I don't think we've ever talked about that.
So I want to
I
get
don't know.
into that in a listener question later, but I guess I
Okay.
wanted to say my take is that it's healthy for you to want to protect your friend group. It's healthy for you to have a bit of a defensiveness, a kind of instinct to go, this is my friend group, and it's a part of your identity. So I think it's healthy for you to identify with, and it makes you closer to people when you go, we are a unit, right? So that's first and foremost. I think it's healthy to have a friend group and have an identity, and to feel passionately that that is you guys. That's separate from whether or not it's like, I guess we should get into whether it should be a closed ecosystem or it should be open and malleable. That's the question, right? Should a friend group be fluid? I think that's really the core of what a lot of the questions that we get and a lot of the convos we have is, should it be fluid? How do I know when to open it, close it, break it off? All of these things.
uh, just going back one step, yes, one of the benefits is it makes your friendship stickier, something we talk about, which is less likely to break apart because you've got hats, you've got a name, you've got a group. Um,
That's
I think
right.
maybe,
That's
yeah.
right. That's right. I mean, I think what I'm learning now is my what I'm learning now, for example, is my farmers market gang. We have a text chain called the farmers market gang, and it's a very defined group, and every Sunday I feel responsible to at least check in. I don't have to go every Sunday, but I feel responsible to respond to the text where it's like who's coming to Groundworks on Sunday morning, right? Our
Mhm.
Luger's chain. It's not just about the dinner. We have a text group. Um, I feel responsible to be in communication with everyone in that group because it's a defined group that I am a member of, right? You're a member. That means you have a responsibility to that group. You're accountable to that group. So I think it's great to have a defined clique or friend crew. And I think it's something that people should take pride in.
And I think the definition of a friend group is that there are some barriers to entry, like a business. Like if
Let's talk about
everyone
that.
can just, yeah.
Let's talk about that.
I mean, I would say, I think it's clear me, you, Jeff, and Fireball Adam are a friend group.
Absolutely,
Uh,
we are.
we call ourselves the White Collar Boys. Who came? I think maybe I came up with that.
Hmm.
It doesn't really mean anything, but
Hilarious because we're also on another chat with JMC called the Blue Collar Boys.
that one came first. I think we were joking, and then I
Okay.
created White Collar Boys. But I don't think it would be pretty. Can you imagine a fifth person coming into that group? And we have some honorary members like Newman and Seinfeld.
It's funny how that works because in certain friend groups that I have, like for example my farmers market crew, I could see some other parents kind of making their way into that crew, right? Um, for our four-person group here, I would find it hard to see how somebody would become a member of that group. Now, that doesn't mean that our other friends aren't becoming friends with all these people and that we haven't expanded, our friendships, but we haven't expanded that specific circle because that circle has sort of a very specific dynamic. And a four-person dynamic with guys, it's a great dynamic too.
Yeah, we're not like super exclusive. Like we don't won't do stuff with other people, won't hang out with other people. We have text change other people. That just I think it would be interesting to 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 talk about how we even came. How did that even those four crystallize?
Right. And I think that's repetitive hanging out. There's a consistency to it. Then there becomes the inside jokes, the fluidity, the vulnerability, the honesty, the making fun of each other, the ganging up on each other at times. It's um, starting rituals together. But I think once you have a really established crew, I also think it's normal to have sort of spin-offs. And so I do think we have like if you want to use TV lingo, like we do have like spin-offs and offshoots and sort of, tangential things that are a little bit like larger or sometimes they're smaller versions of it within many of our crews. Like if you take our Luger's crew too, there's multiple like little subgroups.
Hey, you and I are on two subgroups that they don't overlap.
Right. So what does that say? Right. So what does that say? I guess I wanted to get into what does that say? Is that healthy? Is that okay? Should I feel jealous that I'm not on some subgroup? I guess that's the question because we get a lot of people coming to us going, "Hey, I'm in a friend group. I'm in a friend group, but these guys have a subgroup that I'm not in." And like,
Right.
what's that about? Right? People are like feeling excluded when they're already included.
Right. That's the key term is excluded. That's the crux of it. If someone is feeling excluded. Now, are they feeling excluded because they wish they were part of this group that they probably shouldn't be? Are they feeling excluded because the people in the group are kind of being insular and dicks for some reason? Or is that just a natural or you just haven't found your group?
So should we get into our listener question because it does hit this?
We'll be right back. Okay, guys, this is Asking for a Friend, our marquee segment. If you have a friendship question or ethical dilemma, send it to us on Instagram. Our handle is at Man of the Year Podcast. We read all the questions and we will answer on the show and we can anonymize it if you would like. Matt, take it away.
Hey, Matt and Karo, I met this group of guys through my work friend years ago. They've all been friends for decades, but I honestly feel like part of the crew every time I'm with them. I wish they invited me to more stuff, but I cannot seem to crack the inner circle. What should I do?
So you're trying to crack into another friend group. Well, this is an interesting one. I feel like usually something negative is happening. This seems like a positive all around. They like the guy. The guy wants to get into the group. I mean,
That's right. That's
you
right. And
know,
you know what? This happens all the time, right? That's why I was like, let's get to the listener question because this is an extremely common new guy syndrome, right?
right.
Classic friend purgatory, I'd call it. You're not an outsider, but you're not fully in. I think I've been there in groups. Have definitely been there in my life. So, first of all, I would say what you just said, like, this is a win, right? You've cracked the shell of a decades long crew. Kudos, buddy. Kudos, right? Can you just imagine somebody cracking in? It's like some of our friends have cracked into the Luger's crew, right? Like, they're not in the Luger's crew, but they get to hang out.
Except with one disastrous example of a real someone of when my friend Chi cracked in there.
Right. Yes. But my point is that like you're already in on some level, right? You're in a new crew, right? You're not in their crew, right?
Right.
You're not you're not in their inner circle. You're probably never gonna be in their inner circle. What do you think about me just calling a spade a spade?
I
You're
ha-
never gonna be in their inner circle.
I may be, but one thing I would try is to be the friend, right? That is our
Yeah.
marquee piece of advice, which is stop waiting for other things to happen to you and be the friend. Organize a party or an event or a trip for this crew. And they're going to be like, hey, Jim, like this guy is awesome. Like, let's add you to the group chat or whatever. I Let me just answer what you were saying, Matt. In some respect, it's physically impossible to join a longtime crew. Let's say our crew. Like it's metaphysically impossible because if you meet someone at 45, well, I've known you since second grade, so that's just not what the crew is about.
Correct. This crew is about having 30 plus years of nostalgia together,
Yeah,
right? What you have can be equally fun and vulnerable and true and authentic, but it won't be that. And
right.
that's okay. And that's okay, right? But I like what you said. It's kind of like you could actually create a whole separate crew that involves some of them or all of them, and that's a different new crew, right? Like you said, you could start a new group chat with these guys, and that's the foundations of your new crew, and you can invite them to something you're starting, right? With these guys, what do you like to do with them? Where have you seen them? What do they enjoy doing? Are you watching basketball with them? So start inviting a couple of them to something casual, see who shows. It'll be self-selecting. And maybe you're starting to build a new kind of crew with them, right? And who's the glue guy of that group? Who's the connector of that group? Is it if it's not your friend who's, if you feel your friend is being slightly exclusionary or maybe just doesn't think about it enough, maybe there's other people. If you're feeling good about them, like get their digits.
Uh, I have a Matt special,
Yeah.
right? We like to sort of flip the POV. Why would these other guys want to make you part of the friend group? I'm asking. You should be asking yourself. These guys aren't sitting around being like, "Hey, Jimmy that we hung out with a few times." Like, what? They're not thinking about this,
That's right, because their crew doesn't need anything.
or maybe they don't know that they need anything. But
Right.
yes,
I
yes,
mean, a lot of these decades long crews that are awesome and fun to hang out with, it's because like they're a complete, healthy, awesome dynamic. No, of course you want to be part of that.
right, right. Of course, wouldn't who wouldn't? But I'm just
Who
saying
would not?
they're not sitting around thinking about your membership
Yeah.
of the friend group. So either
Yeah.
you got to make them think about it by being
Right.
undeniable,
Right.
or create a subgroup like you said.
Right. But
Because
also, a part of this truth, right, is maybe you'll never get in there, but you won't get in immediately, right? I mean, you were jokingly like, "Hey, is there like a barrier to entry?" Like, yeah, time is a barrier to entry for sure. No?
yeah. Well, let me give you a hypothetical that's based on this question. Let's say you move to Milwaukee and you have a mutual friend, and you meet this guy who lives there. He's the only person you know. He's great. You hit it off. He's got a high school crew. It's sort of you're never going to be in that high school crew. You want to be invited when they, go watch football, but like they have a crew. So those other guys don't care about you.
No, they do not. And so unless you make individual relationships with a few of them at a time, connect. I
Right.
mean, it's going to be a slow build. And if you really want to do it, it's going to be a slow build. You're going to have to snipe them off one by one, getting them to like you, right? Or in smaller groups, right? And like what you said, be the friend. Like if you got 4 tickets to something cool, like tell your buddy, hey, why don't you bring 2 of your high school dudes? I like those guys. I want to hang out with them more. I mean, I think you also could be open and honest with your buddy, you know, of like, hey, man, because he could set the boundary, right? Here's what you could do. Let's just say you put yourself in that guy's shoes. You can do two things. You could just be like, yeah, I'm not gonna like bring him into my high school thing. It's weird. It's uncomfortable. But if it actually is comfortable and he is getting along with everybody, you could pick and choose a few things that you could bring this guy along to.
I've realized I have done this once in my life, and then I broke into best friend Mike's crew.
Mm,
The Drew and Matt and Eric and those guys.
yeah,
And that was just kind of like
that's true.
being at events invited by best friend Mike, but then spending time getting to know his friends.
Right, right.
And
And
I
how long would you say that took? How many times?
from meeting him to getting on group chat, 10 years.
Right, 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 right. 10 years. It took you 10 years to break into a guy that you're already close with, his crew.
I never really thought about this, to be honest.
10 years. And
you know, I think, but Matt, I think you would attest. But I'm also part of other friend crews, so that wasn't like I worry the listener doesn't have anybody else, so he's like, well, if I can't get into this, what am I going to do?
right, you didn't need it, which also people smell.
Right.
The perfume called Eau de Desperation.
Oh, I thought you meant the other way, that I was sort of, just Jason Bateman says sexy indifference.
No, that's what I'm saying. You did have that, but I'm talking about our
Oh,
listener.
oh, got it. Yes, yes,
If
yes.
you have that scent of desperation,
Right.
it just makes it so much harder to crack into a pre-existing crew. You know?
There's nothing anybody loves more than someone who's got better things to do than hang out with you. You're like, whoa,
That's
what?
that's right.
That was a
This
triple
reminds me.
negative, I think.
This reminds me of one of the funniest things that happened when we were in high school. I forget who was at my house. I don't think you were. I don't think you were there at the time. But we were signing each other's yearbooks. Remember that was a thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, we had this kid that was not in our inner circle, but we were hanging out with him and we're doing this kind of intimate thing, kind of like waiting for him to leave because we're signing each other's yearbook. Like, hey, if I signed his yearbook, it was probably like, hey, good to see you, buddy. Like, it was great hanging out with you.
Yeah.
Ours were like these emotional, weepy testimonials to each other that dated back to second grade. And all of a sudden, while we're signing the yearbooks, and it's kind of awkward because he's not like involved in it, he's just kind of sitting there. He goes, just like old times, huh?
Can you say who it was?
No, I don't want to say. I'll tell you
Okay.
offline, but it was
Okay.
just one of those moments where like got old times that we haven't had with you. Right. So I think also like you don't want to be forcing your way into a 30-year-old crew when they're in that like moment. You have to pick the moments, right? If they're in the full-on nostalgia, like
Yeah.
hang mindset, you don't belong there.
I have when we're done with the question, I have an amazing friend group tradition to tell you about. I think
Okay,
we
so I
answered it.
think I
Yeah.
think I think we answered it essentially was acknowledge your reality, which is you're never going to break into it in the same way that everybody else is in it, but they already are giving you license to kind of be and create a new break off crew if you want, if that feels right to you, right? And it's
Yeah.
going to take time and it's going to take you not being desperate to be in it, and it's going to take you starting maybe some new rituals with some of these guys that you like and figuring out who the glue guy is. But look, I wish you luck. Karo did it after 10 years. So we've got a time horizon for you.
And by the way, it's
uh,
very fruitful, and I love those guys.
yeah. And look, this is just part of life and it happens to all of us. But congrats on them, or you've already done a lot of
Yeah.
the work.
All right, guys, that was asking for a friend. If you have a friendship question, send it to us on Instagram. So, Matt, I have a friend named Arazu. You met her once, I think. I went to Israel with her.
Yes.
She's younger. She's early 30s, LA native, and she invited me to her. She had a birthday party this week. It was pretty low key, but her friend crew was there, and they're early 30s, so they're all getting married and
Okay.
do the thing. So when they go to a wedding, okay, they start a joint notes app, and they write each of them write down funny things that happen, like mysteries, questions. Who was that person? Can you believe it? And then they brought me into this. I went with them back to one of their apartments. This is a week after the wedding. They write, they take the notes app and they write it onto a giant, I don't know, easel,
I love this.
and they go through each one and they just talk shit and they tell, can you remember when her boss jumped on the table and they hooked up with each other? It was hilarious. They call it the post-mortem.
I'm so pissed that the only wedding I have left is yours and other people's second marriages. It's never going to be the same.
We should definitely do that for mine.
Yes.
But like they were just, and I was like, to your point from the listener question of like, you're part of another person's group and you have to respect how far they go back. I was kind of fly on the walling it a little bit. Like they were doing stuff and they were like speaking in, is it Farsi? I don't even know. They was like going real deep, playing voice memos and showing pictures. They rented, let me just tell you this, because this is something you and Jess would do. They rented, the street signs, that digital sign, detour, that are on
Mm-hmm.
like tires
Mm-hmm.
and like are on the side of the 405 to like get people to, they rented that and they put it in front of the venue with the sign that they programmed into it. And it was like they didn't get permits or anything, so they bought construction vests. The bride and groom put cones out, rolled this thing, blocked the lane in front of the venue,
Genius. So that they
and
could get everybody in without any traffic issues.
yes, yes, and also said
Holy.
like congrats.
Oh my God.
Um, and then you appreciate this because overnight, it's LA, someone broke into the thing and changed all the lights.
Of course.
Yeah,
So can I ask you a question? I think we would acknowledge I'm an extrovert. I seem comfortable in most settings. There's two settings I feel very uncomfortable in. One is when I'm sober and people are drunk or high. I just don't
yeah,
want to be there. I don't enjoy it. Number
yeah.
two is when I have overstayed in a close crew and they're really in the inside baseball convo and I'm fly on the walling it like you're talking about. That makes me feel very uncomfortable. That's like my cue to leave.
Are you internalizing something that may not be true?
I don't know. To me, I'm always just like, all right, I don't know these people. I don't know what they're talking about. I'm going to go.
Right.
But I guess you didn't have any of those feelings in that moment. You weren't like, I don't want to be here.
This was a very inclusive.
Yeah.
I met all her friends one time, 1 year ago, her last birthday. Everyone came up to me, give me a hug. I didn't even remember who anybody was.
This just happened to me. Jess told me that, like, I went to her friend Ashley's wedding, and I didn't know the guys from Virginia, all these Southern guys. I didn't know any of them. I was like, we knew very few people at this wedding, so like, I guess I didn't display it, but I felt a little bit like, oh, this is not my. I'm not in my zone. I'm gonna like hang back and whatever, talk to some people here and there. Ashley was like, everybody loved you. These guys loved you. I'm like, it's nice to hear, because you do. I think sometimes you do internalize like, oh man, I'm so out of place here.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I've been in those inner sanctum conversations where you're kind of being excluded. Like even the
Well, they
body
don't even
language.
care. They're not like they don't
Right,
care about you. They're not doing it to be rude. They
right,
just don't care. They're so deep in this 30-year look back at something or
right.
gossip about somebody that you don't know. They know you don't know. Occasionally at the beginning they will try to include you, but if they're really trying to have the flow of the convo, it's impossible to be like, oh, and by the way, this is somebody from second grade that mom was a
Oh
teacher.
yeah, oh yeah. Like what's the word? Like doing a little clip notes of like a footnote of like, oh, this
Right,
this person. You're like, they don't want to bother with that shit.
right, right.
That's the point of
Especially
a friend group.
right, right. Exactly. You have shorthand. You don't need to do the longhand.
Shorthand. That's a great word. That's a great word.
Right. Friend groups have shorthand. Right. That's just what it is. Friend groups have shorthand, and you're not going to know the shorthand. You may learn it over time, but it's a very hard thing to really understand everything about a friend group that goes back 30 years.
So I want to close with a quick call to action to our friends, to our listeners, and also to you, Matt. Uh, if you're part of a friend group that doesn't have a name, I want you guys to name it. Like
Mm,
change the group chat name. Just start calling yourselves that. Matt, and to you, I want you to come up with a better name for Farmers Market Gang.
mm. Okay.
We don't.
It's
We
my
can beat
homework for
that.
next week. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think.
Okay.
I think we can beat that.
Okay. All right. I mean, what if they're like all like, no, we love the farmers market gang.
Well, you started it, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah. All right. I'll
You're the
see if I
captain.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. All right. Well, I thought this was hopefully helpful. As I said, if you were new here, this is what we do. We try to pick a topic that is useful that we're getting back feedback from the world about for friendship, and we're just trying to make it a little bit easier. To either make or maintain friendships. One day at a time. We're worried about your social health. We think that's as important as your physical or mental health.
I love it. Thanks so much for listening. Always remember, be good to yourself, be good to your friends. Hey, Matt, love you, buddy.
Love you, buddy.